It's a pleasure to be here and with this group. So the title of our session today is Managing Changes in the Business of Music, and that's what we're chatting about. Just to kind of briefly let you know who's here. So again, my name is Byron Pascoe. I'm an entertainment lawyer with the law firm Edwards Creative Law. And I'm going to ask our panelists to briefly tell us a little bit about themselves and perhaps something that people shouldn't forget. And so let's start with Zachary.
Well, hello, everybody. My name is Zachary Lucky, and I come from Saskatoon, Saskatchewan, by way of Orillia, Ontario. I'm a couple hours north of Toronto. I'm a roots folk country songwriter, and something they might not forget about me. I really struggled with that one, Byron. I feel like it's a hard thing. Something I'm trying to live down these days. I'm going to try and get beyond is there was a CTV news story about me, nothing to do with my music. It was about a backyard luge track I built, and it went across the nation, more press than I could ever dream of getting for my music. And I'm going to be outrunning that story for the rest of my life. So try and forget that one.
I'd say put the link in the chat here, but maybe not. Julian, over to you.
All right. My name is Julian Taylor. I am sitting in my attic in good old Toronto, Ontario. I'm a singer-songwriter. I've been doing this. Actually, here's something that you shouldn't forget. My debut record with my band Staggered Crossing turns 20 years old this month.
Congrats.
Yeah. And so, yeah, I was in Staggered Crossing. Thank you. I have a band by my own name, the Julian Taylor Band, and I have a solo career under my own name as well. Was the founder of Bent Penny Records and sold that, did some radio promo and put out some releases. I released Jay Bennett from Wilco's record. And yeah, I don't know. I'm part Indigenous, part West Indian, and I am a brother. I am a father, and I am a son and a cousin and a friend.
Awesome. Thank you, Julian. Tara, you're up next.
Hi, I'm Tara Shannon. It's wonderful to be here with all of you today. I am an artist and a songwriter, and I started a record label called Willow Sound Records and a publishing company called Syndicate Music Publishing, and I run a development program for artists and writers where we focus on education and empowerment for independent artists to understand the business of music. Something that people shouldn't forget about me, I don't know, but I can tell you what some people find shocking and can't forget about me is that I have 7 kids. I have 5 boys and 2 girls, and most people find that hard to process for some reason. And then it's the thing they don't forget about me.
Based on Julian's reaction, he will not forget.
See? Told ya.
Good for you.
And rounding out, Kevin, you're up.
So my name is Kevin Bourne. I run a media in Ottawa called Shifter. I cover mostly Black genres across Canada. I also run a PR and content marketing firm called Shifter Agency that I run with my wife. And I'm a husband, a father of 3, originally from Toronto, now based in Ottawa. Something people should not forget about me. I was a court reporter during the Anna Nicole Smith trial. There you go.
Very cool. I didn't know that about you. That's
yes.
awesome.
We're learning new things. Okay, so for each of you, and I'll start with you, Kevin, what I wanted to ask to kick things off today is about how your music business has evolved and changed so far during this pandemic.
So for me, I'll talk about media. It's changed in the sense that we can't cover, there's no events to cover. So that was a big part of what we did, was just going to different like shows and whatnot and covering those. So that's not there as much. But it's helped in the sense that it's made the world a lot smaller. Like a lot of press runs have gone virtual, like a lot of Zoom press runs are happening. So actually have been able to get onto press runs that we would never get invited to before. For like big, for a lot bigger talent. So that's kind of been interesting, like the whole idea of just press runs going virtual. So that's been good in that sense. And I think just in general, for me, just as a content creator, like, it's been good in the sense that people are kind of sitting around and have time to actually consume content. So even when it comes to our numbers and the content we create, all of our numbers have gone up during the pandemic because people are just looking for things to watch and read. So that's been beneficial in that sense.
Has advertising gone up, or have there been more opportunities or less opportunities because of this?
At first, it was really bad. At first, it was like, companies and artists were less likely to put out money, just because there was a lot of like just uncertainty around people's income. Like we had certain projects that were canceled that were likely to be our most lucrative projects, and then as soon as the pandemic hit, they were canceled. They ended up eventually kind of resuming, but at first, like everything we had planned was just completely canceled, income-wise. So at first, we're kind of like, yeah, so what are we going to do here? But eventually, as people kind of, as we kind of got further into the pandemic, we found that people were more willing to advertise again. I personally felt bad when it comes to artists, like even having artists wanted to advertise with us. I was like, I feel bad taking your money because I know it may not be easy right now, but I found eventually like artists were just like more willing than ever eventually just to kind of put money out there and advertise what they do. So.
Okay. Thank you for that insight. Tara, how about you? How has your music business evolved during the pandemic?
Well, we had to completely shift the model because we used to do everything in person. So our workshop series, even my one-on-one consulting with our members was all one-on-one in person. So we scrambled. I had to get friendly with Zoom and learn all of this stuff. And yeah, we just shifted to an online model for the workshops and the courses that we teach, and even my one-on-one consulting, which is kind of not, there's some positives. I mean, I really like the in-person for workshops, and normally I travel and host workshops, and I'm missing that part. But the one-on-one consulting, it's kind of nice to be able to do that in my pajamas. So there's I've embraced the more relaxed way of things, and because my studio is in my home, they're not having this much traffic here is kind of nice as well. So yeah, so it was just a little bump in the road, and then we just kind of changed the platform, and it's been ironically, we've increased I think a little bit like what Kevin was saying is that more people are at home, they have a little bit more time to do this kind of education or further their career. So we've had an increase in membership over the pandemic, which has been nice.
I would think that if people don't have to travel to you wherever you are, that it just increases the likelihood that they'll be interested to be a part of it because they aren't concerned about having to get there.
Yeah, and we already did, like, we have members who live all over North America, so we were already doing a portion of it all by Zoom. And even as a songwriter, just the songwriting sessions, when you're writing with people who are overseas and stuff, you have to use that as a tool. So it wasn't a huge shift, but now we do the whole thing like that. And you're right, yeah. And also too, I'm in the country, so I'm just outside of Ottawa, so it's even nice just for people in Ottawa to not have to drive out to the country.
Sounds good. Okay, Julian, how about you? How has your music business evolved during the pandemic?
I'd have to say that the thing that stands out the most would be live performance. Obviously, it's become a situation where I've had to buy tools so that I can, record proper videos that promoters and festivals and venues are asking for. When it comes to live streaming, the same sort of scenario. Certainly at the beginning of the pandemic, it was just literally a laptop and my phone. I'm not sure if you saw, but like everybody was just posting videos of them sitting in their living room and recording their live shows and broadcasting live. And I think that died down pretty quickly, which, I also think is a good thing because the quality wasn't very good. Some people chose not to do it at all, while everybody was posting things. And when things like that are falling through your feed, like I said, I think they get really old quickly. So the thing it's been pretty busy this year for me because I released a record, and I'm just sort of trying to keep up. But it's actually made more work as a performer when it comes down to performances, because now we have to sort of become sound engineers, videographers, and it's that learning curve that's been trickier for me than anything. Not because it's hard to do, but it's just time consuming. And I'm also a father, and I have another thing that I do as a radio host. So it just becomes something that that bit of work has been quite, what's the word I'm looking for? Tedious.
Yeah, that's appropriate. Have there been any good resources that you would recommend people? We could do a 10-hour session about the tech of live streaming, and that's not what this is specifically. But have there been some good resources that you would recommend people check out for how to try to play some of those hats, or is there some way that some of these tasks can be outsourced to other people? Like, what would you recommend on that front?
Well, there was a nice StreamYard's tutorial like on their website that I checked out. Also, I subscribe to the Bandzoogle newsletter, and they've been pretty good about sharing information that way. Certainly, there's other people to outsource, and I would suggest speaking to venues and festivals that would have outsourced those people in the first place, because they're trying to restructure their business as well. So anybody who's part of like PSI is like a company here in Toronto and St. Catharines, and they were doing live shows, and now they've changed their business model where they're trying to do this as well. Other than that, I think that it's the DIY sort of aspect about the music industry has amplified because of the pandemic, and I think that it's just sort of a trial by error kind of thing.
Do you think are fans forgiving in general, or are they what's the reaction that you think fans are giving, to kind of the different kind of presentation of performances?
I think that fans were really eager to see their favorite groups right out of the gate, or their favorite artists. I found it interesting to see that anybody who can actually play an acoustic instrument was well ahead of the curve than anybody who couldn't, which is an interesting thing. It's almost as if it's gone back to people needing to know how to play instruments. Weird, right? But anyway, the audience has been very forgiving. However, I can't really say that they have been on their attention span, because I think that if the quality is better, their attention span is more involved. Sorry about that. Is more involved, and when the quality is not, they tend to click away. So if you want to look at it that way, I would say they are forgiving, but you want to make sure that they spend more time with you, and that they're more engaged rather than, oh, just, hey, there's Julian again doing his show in his living room. I've seen his couch. Well, basically, I ran out of places to play in my house. I ran out of staging. So I had to figure out how to maneuver that. But yeah, they've been pretty forgiving, but you want people to stick with you a little longer than, I think,
Perhaps different backdrops.
Yeah, right.
Zachary, how about you? How has your music business evolved during this time?
I think like everybody this year, it's been a real journey. I mean, at the start for me, it was a hard stop. We were set to do a ton of tours. We had just released a new record, and we were going to go to Europe multiple times. We were supposed to do a big run through the States, whole bunch of things that the rug just got pulled out like everybody else. So it was really a year of, I mean, at the start, kind of figuring out how to ride it out, because none of us knew how long this was going to go. And I did a whole bunch of the live streaming stuff early on in the year, figured out what my audience's attention span would be for that. And like Julian was saying, learned how to do it, learned how to make it look good, learned how to make it sound good. And I mean, frankly, I'm just getting there now, just figuring it out now by this point in the year. And after watching a whole bunch of people and doing a bunch of reading, but a big part of the year for me too has also been how do I connect with my audience? How do I remain genuine in my social media presence? But not just that, but how do I engage new people? How do I bring new people in? Because when I'm as an independent artist, for me, I would say that maybe somewhere 80%, 90% of my income is live performance. It's playing in living rooms. It's playing small theaters, bars, clubs, all across the country in Europe and etc. And I mean, I love performing. A big part of it is that it's what I enjoy doing, but also a big part of it too is interacting with people. And so how do you find those people? There's a ton of people out there who are interested in what you are doing, on Instagram, on Twitter, on Facebook. How do you find those people? How do you put what you're doing in front of them? So it's been a year of trying to figure that out, and trying to, ride it out like everybody else.
You have kind of, one, tip or suggestion regarding engaging new people that you've kind of, come up with?
Yeah, I'm not sure if I have a tip necessarily. It's kind of like you would interact with somebody in a bar room for me, whether that's interacting in comments on somebody else's social media post. If you were in a bar room and you were playing a show, people would be coming up to you, they'd be talking to you, I'd be talking to them. And you really do end up you can spend a lot of time on social media doing this, talking with people, interacting, finding people. And then there's the whole other side of advertising on social media, which I haven't really begun to get into, but it's something I've been doing a lot of sort of studying on and trying to learn about, because there's a huge, a lot of potential there as well, I think.
For sure. Well, thank you all for those perspectives. A question for kind of anyone who wants to answer. We don't know what the future of the music business will look like once most people are vaccinated, or after COVID, or whatever you want to call the next phase of this whole thing. So how are we supposed to plan for whatever the future brings? And should we be spending time planning ahead for that future point?
I'll go, I guess.
Sure.
Up until this point, I've had a very hard time even considering planning anything, and I think that's okay. I think it's okay to say that. I think it's okay to say, I think it's hard to watch music festivals. I know everybody wants to keep moving forward, but for me personally, at this exact second, trying to book a tour for the fall time is a pretty tough thing to do. But I think where we're getting to is I think we have to begin having those conversations. We have to begin talking to venues, have to begin talking to our agents, and be realistic about the timeline. I think it's realistic to go, okay, what's touring in 2022 look like? I think that's a realistic number. Mm-hmm. I think by that point in time, we all could very well be back on the road. I would like us to be back on the road in fall time. So would my bank account and my sanity. But I don't know. I don't know if any of us know if that's a reality at this point.
Well, it sounds like, there is planning in the sense of, having conversations about the future, even if it's unknown. Mm-hmm. Anyone else want to add anything to that?
I was just going to add that, the challenge is the economics of it, because you have venues that can book dates, but if they build their business model based on a venue that has 90 seats and they can sell 90 tickets at X amount of dollars, and now they don't know what the rules will be at that time. Can they sell the 90? Will it be 50? Will it be 10? Will it be? So it's difficult for venues to, do the math. And then the artists don't know what they're making. So I think the economics of it makes it really tricky. I think there's a lot of great advocacy happening, for the live music industry. And if we can find a way to sort of subsidize that and fill in the gaps, on the economics of it, I think it'll be easier for people to dive in and have faith in setting some dates.
I also think that when it comes down to what's going to happen in the future, a lot of people talk about, when things go back to normal, it's never going to happen. It's done. The world before COVID is done, and the world after COVID is a world that we're all sitting here talking about creating, and that world will formulate itself. And I think that it'll have bits and parts of what has happened throughout this pandemic. So when we talk about the fact that we're working on live streaming and video and audio performances, I think that venues themselves and people booking acts around the world are going to have to realize a couple of things. Number one is that, like Tara said, they don't know what their rules and regulations are going to be, but they also know that they're able to reach a worldwide audience. It's almost as if you look at this whole thing and you hearken it back to the days of when Napster hit. I know that Napster has nothing to do with the pandemic. What I'm trying to compare it to is a way for the industry itself to evolve and cooperate with each other. So an artist, where I sit, I don't think any real touring is going to happen. You're going to get blotches of things all over the world, maybe this year. Maybe next year it starts to open up a little bit, all depending on what happens with the world on every level. But when it comes to live music and performance, I think that there's a few things that need to happen. I think that the collection agencies like the SOCANs and the ASCAPs of the world are going to have to play catch up with the digital side of things in cooperation with the venues. I think that the venues are going to have to cooperate with the artists, and the artists are going to have to cooperate with them in terms of, say a club has 100 seats. Now this club can now reach 100,000 people based on what production, audio, and promotion value is happening online. People are so used to being on their tablets and in front of screens now that I also don't see any generations that are younger than, for instance, just under my age, like 30 and less, are not even going to really realize what a live show is all about anyway. And so it's going to be super tricky to get them involved. I remember talking to somebody who said his son's a DJ and doesn't even go out. He just goes to Instagram to find out what the party was like. This is before COVID. And now it's amplified. So shows are going to get smaller and more intimate, in my personal opinion, because of the amount of people that are going to be able to attend them in person, but amplified by what we learn from the digital world.
There's going to be another layer to that too, I think, Julian, just to expand on that, is
Sure.
When the world says it's okay now to open up gradually, then you have to deal with the fear, because people have been conditioned for so long to live in fear and anxiety. So even when the world opens up, it won't be like, woohoo, because you'll have a large number of population that will still hesitate. So I think we will see much smaller intimate things. And it is an interesting thing that the social media platforms or the digital technology or the, broadcasting world should meet, these live venues. That would be a really cool, business model going forward. But you're right. The finance element of that would have to catch up. Like the PROs would have to, catch up to that. But that's a really interesting and potentially positive thing as far as getting in front of more and more people as artists.
A quick comment about the PROs, in that I've been like, the one kind of topic I've been talking about for the last year on panels is about online concert licenses and royalties. And they exist, just many people just don't actually pay what they're supposed to pay. And so, for example, SOCAN, whether you have, so for SOCAN, so for audience members in Canada, the rate is 2.99% of the ticket price or what the artists are paid. And in real life, it's 3%. So it's essentially the same thing. The issue is that festivals, for example, who are doing online concerts don't know what to do, or are still learning what to do. And the SOCAN fee is one of the 3 fees that they're supposed to pay. So there's a lot of education that needs to be done for people who are running commercial concerts to pay appropriately the performance rights royalties, the mechanical royalties, and the synchronization licenses that are supposed to be paid to the writers and their representatives and their collectives. Yeah, Kevin or Zach, any comments about the potential way forward of smaller in person but more amplified digital performances?
I think for me, as someone who's going to be putting on more events, like we were actually planning a festival in the middle of the pandemic, which we ended up canceling just because of the last round of restrictions. But I find that even for me, the advertising potential, I think, is really there. Like when it comes to the amount of people we were able to reach. Like when we were planning our event, people were like, advertisers were like, how many people are you planning to reach? And, just through online, we were able to say, we're going to reach maybe 60,000 people just through all of our social media platforms and advertising and whatnot. And so even just realizing that, like the potential, even as someone putting on events, like there's so much potential to reach a larger audience than if you were just having 1,000, 2,000 people at a venue, and then that allows you to even make even more when it comes to sponsorship and whatnot. So I think, I think that adds a kind of a layer of just, when it comes to putting on events being more lucrative, like that's an aspect there that I think, is going to be available to people when it comes to just, putting on events.
The challenge that comes to mind for me is competition, because, if you put an event on in a geographic location, your competition with live music is the other venues in town. When you're going, online, it's really against the world. So, you are competing against a lot more people. For sure, there's more capacity. Anyone who has an internet connection, possibly speaks the same language as you, but try reaching. There's still a marketing play of how you best reach as many people as possible. Just because they're able to show up doesn't mean that they will.
In that regard, may I just say that rather than eating other people's lunch, I think that the whole new way of looking at things could potentially be, looking after people a little bit better than we have in the past, which means in what I'm trying to say is that if let's say Kevin's got a show happening and he knows that I'm planning something too, rather than, go out at each other from a competitive level, there's ways to cross promote. And there's ways for people to say, okay, look, would you be okay if, I did this first? Would you be okay teaming up with me in something? Say Zach and I wanted to do something. We can contact somebody in the UK and we can work that out and cross promote and even show it off each other's Facebook pages. And that way, it instead of, like I said, eating each other's lunch, we can share.
I think this whole online thing it's going to be like almost like a gold rush. Like I think it's going to be people are just going to be like jumping in and throwing all kinds of different events at the same time. It's going to be, and then eventually they'll probably like level off, and you probably may not have as many players. But I think in the beginning, it's going to allow. I think we're going to see a lot more people just kind of, unfortunately, like competing and having at it, and then we'll see. I guess in the end, we'll see who those people are that emerge afterwards, but.
It'll be just like everybody posting the live videos on their phone, sitting in front of their in the living
room. There's some interesting stuff that I'm starting to see, and we've started to use, because you can create the same, like one of the motivators to leave your couch, the concept of draw, to leave your couch and go and see a live act. That thing that draws you from the comfort of your home out to a venue. Part of that is fear of missing out, like fear of missing it, because that artist is only available in that city at that time. So there are geo-targeting mechanisms now on these platforms where you can limit where that broadcast is available. So you can somewhat create a touring feeling or only available on this day and time by restricting where you're broadcasting, which is, when I saw that pop up, I thought that was really interesting.
That's cool.
Yeah, I think when you think about why you go to a show, it's that personal, intimate, genuine connection. It's having that person right there in front of you, and what happens that night is not happening the next night or the next night or the next night. I have also taken in some live streaming stuff. I've watched a bunch of my friends and artists I enjoy because what a time. You could see anybody. You could see Jason Isbell play on a Tuesday night or Laura Marling on a Friday night. And it's only available to people in Canada. To kind of jump back just a little bit, I'm with Julian. I think things are not going to be the same. They're not going to go back to the way they were. Are people going to be playing in bars again? Yeah, at some point in time, I think so. But I think there will be an increased demand for live performance. People have been performing music forever. It's always going to happen. Yes, we're living in this new kind of age of screens where we're all staring at our phones and our computers and our Zoom calls all the time. But I think when there's an opportunity to go out to see somebody sing with a guitar or a piano, or to see a quintet or something, I think people are going to be wanting to do that. I mean, you look at what's happening. I realize it's a totally different ballgame in New Zealand, but there was 30,000 people at a music festival last week. You know, people are going to do that. I think, you know, certain things are going to be. It's going to take time to see them happen again. I don't foresee myself playing a house concert right away. It just doesn't seem like a thing. I do a lot of those. I don't think it's going to happen for a while, unless it's like an outdoor thing. But I think you'll be seeing like bigger theaters doing a smaller percentage of seats, and it wouldn't surprise me if the value of art and music went up a bit. Are people going to be willing to pay 10 extra bucks to go see somebody they really like? I would. You know, who knows? It'll be interesting to see it, but it's not going to be the same. And I think we all have to be ready to sort of grow and learn and progress with it.
I don't think you can. I don't know. I don't think you can ever replace the feeling of not just connecting with the artist, but even connecting with other fans. Like when you're going to Blues Fest and everybody's walking, like everyone's walking over, like down with whatever and towards like that feeling, where you're, even if you're going to a Blue Jays game in Toronto and everybody's wearing blue on the subway and everyone's walking through that feeling is like, you can't replace that feeling. Like that feeling is, or even like, you know, there's a break in the song and everybody, you know, and everybody's just, the whole crowd is singing, like, you know, 20,000 people, or even if it's 1,000 people, everyone's singing the lyrics at the same time. Like those feelings are like, you know, like imagine like watching Woodstock or on live stream, like, you know, like being there, like to be able to say I was there when Hendrix was playing the Star Spangled Banner, like it's not the same if you're watching it on a live stream. So I think those moments, like you have to be there, like and it's the communal experience. It's not just the connection. There's the connection with the artist, but then there's also that like connection with other people that feel the same way as you in that moment. You know, like that can't be replaced.
No, it's not replaceable.
We just have to remind people about it whenever the time is right. But to Julian's point, you know, it won't ever be the same, but there will be some, I guess what we're all getting at is that, you know, the experiences people had in live in person in past, you know, there's a value to it, there's a premium to it, and hopefully, you know, sooner than later there can be more of it. Switching gears a little bit to not performance specifically, but other ways that musicians can earn money, from the music itself to merchandise. What are some thoughts anyone has about the evolution of you know, sales of music and merch throughout the pandemic and thereafter? Are people, Kevin, are you reading anything about kind of more engagement with digital platforms? Are people listening to more than they were before?
I mean, so I'm talking to some local artists, like they've let me know that like their streams have gone up during the pandemic. Even songs that they had released like 6 months ago, like songs that were like old songs, all of a sudden like we're getting like, you know, a lot more attention. So that's just some conversations I had with local artists. So they're saying that they've seen just more engagement with their music since the pandemic. And I've also heard a lot more local artists just talking about like licensing and artist syncing and that and whatnot. Like I've heard a lot more people kind of looking into that as a potential revenue source. And because I think for a lot of people, like even though people are some of the artists I've talked to have been getting more streams, like obviously they're not making a living off their streams. And I think more and more artists I've spoken to are kind of just have given up on streaming being of actual viable income. So they're looking at this syncing and or licensing and whatnot as a potential, and then obviously merch. There's a lot of artists selling merch right now, of course, just as an alternate way of making money.
So Zachary, you just had a merch drop recently, a few vinyl albums and a trucker hat. Like, is that something you would have done? I mean, you know, we don't really know what we would have been doing on February 17th, 2021 without a pandemic, but like, how did COVID impact your merch strategy?
Well, I mean, like I said at the beginning of this, at the start, it was a hard stop for me. We had this brand new record. We had so many of them. And we're going, what do I do with these? I can't sell these. and things sort of trickled off a bit. I mean, the online physical sales for me have been sort of trickling for the past couple of years because streaming it's just how people are engaging with music right now. And I think for me personally, I've spent a lot of time this year reading about it and reading about, I'm looking at that data every single day. I'm looking where people are listening. I think it's important to engage with it. So like you said, I just did this. It was actually quite random, if I can admit to it. This sort of package deal is, I was sitting there a couple weeks ago and I was going, I have all this merch. What can I do with this? And it's Kevin was saying, it was old stuff to me. That record came out in October. Album's a year old. We have these t-shirts, these hats, these records. Maybe if I put them all in a box and I make a bit of a social media campaign around this, and I hit the cost on one of the vinyls. And so I did 3 vinyls and a hat for $50. And it was like sold out of everything. It was crazy. I honestly did not expect to. I thought maybe I would sell 2 or 3. Not that I'd end up moving, 4 figures worth of merch. So I think we have to be creative. We have to figure out, because nobody was going to my Bandcamp to buy that stuff the week before. How can we get this stuff in front of people? Because like many folks, over the past year, we've been continuing with our Instagrams and our Facebooks, and there are new fans. There's new people engaging with your stuff who have never been to one of your shows. Put something out in front of them. There's a good chance they want to support you. And it's funny, there was people who are like, okay, I don't want all the things, but I want to support you. How can I do it? And for me this year also, it's been about saying to people, because I know as an artist, somebody who doesn't have a lot of money, it's like, these are the ways you can support me. You can subscribe to my YouTube channel, because we can actually make money off that eventually. If you get, your 1,000 subscribers, you can subscribe to my email list. You can, click follow on Spotify, all those things, all the little things. Anyways, yeah, it was interesting to see the response to that, the merch campaign.
How do we feel about the concept of, essentially asking for support while selling something, interesting and exclusive, just kind of relating to the time we're in? Like, where do we draw the line, or what's the best tone on, selling merch now versus on the road, pre or post COVID?
I think people still want to support the artist they like. It's gonna, I don't think that has changed. It is hard times all around, but I've received a lot of messages from folks, like I say, and people are still out there listening. There's a, albeit small, percentage of fans that are aware that Spotify is not really paying artists, and they know it's like, okay, I need to figure out a way to support these people that I value, and it's kind of just pointing them in the right direction.
Mm-hmm. Tara, you're going to say something?
I was just going to say about merch. Merch is it's a funny thing, because what really drives merch is an emotional connection. So when you go to a live show and you experience something electric with all these other humans and that exchange of energy and everything, you typically go to merch because you want to have something that you can have that feeling again, that reminds you of how you felt in that audience when you're watching it. And then there's the other side of the emotional connection that Zachary's touching on, is support. So support comes from the emotional connection of caring and wanting this artist to keep moving forward. So the word support, Byron knows me, so he knows how I feel about the word support. I kind of get, a little prickly about it, because I don't think artists are charity cases. And sometimes that word kind of touches on the whole, oh, could you please support me? Or, the whole, patrons of the arts kind of vibe. Like, indie artists are some of the hardest working, intelligent, creative people out there, making their business work. And you would never, you wouldn't use that language necessarily around other types of businesses or industry. But I think what comes underneath it is a caring. It does mostly come from a really good place. So I think right now, because we don't have that same electric connection in live shows going on that drives merch, the educating, like Zach is saying, educating the audiences is really key, because most of them really don't know how artists make their money. So when it's presented that way, like the best way you can support, if you love my music and you love how you feel when you hear my music, this is how I make my living. Merch, all these things, follow me, all these kinds of things. And I think that will drive. Just coming to Mitch asked a question in the chat here. So just to touch on his question, that can drive. I think education can drive it. Making it available and easy for them, and making the price affordable as well. And the DSPs now, all the digital service providers, have really great built-in mechanisms to get your merch out. There's on-demand inventory. There's so many ways to affordably get merch into fans' hands. But that emotional connection, I think, is what drives that.
I think, sorry, I was just gonna say that I think that if you've done a good job of like fostering a relationship with your fan base, and you've added value to your fan base over say a period of time, it's not bad to make an ask, in a sense, of to say, you know what, because there's a relationship there, right? If you've never built the relationship, then it's going to be hard to make that kind of ask and say, hey, support me, buy some merch and whatnot. But if you've done a good job of fostering that relationship, and you've added value for years, I don't think it seems out of place to kind of make the ask and say, hey, can you support, just because you've built a relationship. Like if your fans never heard from you, and you've never built that relationship before the pandemic, and all of a sudden you're like, hey, buy my merch and whatever, then it comes across as like one-sided. But if you've added that value over years, like I don't think it's wrong to make an ask like that.
Apart from like a artist branded, vaccine, is there any ideas you've seen that's kind of a unique merch product or service that's been?
I saw Asukomo just dropped a cool, like a bobblehead. I mean, there's nothing really. There's nothing really pandemic about it, but it's his I guess his recent music video, like it was really like artistic and stuff. So he released a bobblehead of like him in a ski mask and all that kind of stuff. I've never seen. I mean, I didn't see anything like that before, so it really kind of caught my attention. Like he's been pushing the bobbleheads, and I thought it was cool. Like I might have to get one just because I think it's a very cool idea.
Any like specific recommendations on you're talking here about like the DSPs having some connection or some links to some merch ideas. Any specific online store or partner that any of you recommend that the artists should check out to seek out some good options?
I've had success with Band Zubo. I really have. It's that, and I've had success with Patreon as well, coming up with different ideas as to what to present to fans. But it is tricky. Merch has always been a tricky situation, even selling at live shows, right? What else? I mean, the Bandcamp Friday idea is really nice. It doesn't move a lot of units, but it's always nice to be aware that it's happening and say something, because people like Tara said, they don't know. Education is part of the whole situation right now, and as we educate ourselves, I guess a friend called me the other day, and he said that why is the music industry one of the only industries that doesn't have a built-in infrastructure to help mentor and teach people? He came from the tech industry, and people in tech are easily attainable. Even at the biggest corporations, you're on LinkedIn, you can find these people. There's a network to be able to do this. I mean, we're doing it now, so I'm not saying that, but he's from outside of the industry looking in and making that comment.
Oh boy, can I go on and on about that all day, but it would need to involve wine, and it's only like 1:45. So, but Yeah, I would love to touch on that, but for success for merch and stuff, I use the website platform where we use with our members is Wix, and it has a really comprehensive, sophisticated tool built in for merch, moving merch, and all that good stuff. So there's really, really great things to use. But I think it's really, really important for artists to not buy merch for the sake of merch, because it's something you're supposed to have. So you'll be most successful with your merch if it is truly aligned with your brand and it has a purpose other than just to say you have merch. So it's such a noisy environment right now. And what we're dealing with really is an attention economy. So everything you're doing now, you're just trying to grab people's attention long enough for them to make a connection with you, and then hopefully nurture them through a relationship into a conversion, a sale, an email address, something like that. So, when you have merch, to think of it like a campaign, and Zach just said his campaign was really successful because he did it as like thinking of it as a campaign, and just the motivation was, how do I move some of this stuff? Let's try it this way. I had a merch campaign on a song that I had called Being a Mommy's a Mother. And we put together a self-care pack. And so it was related to the single. It was, pushed at that time, but then we had a lot of success with it. So then it became a Mother's Day campaign as well. And then we did a Quarantine Queen campaign where, give this to the mother in your life that's surviving quarantine with young children. So when it's really aligned with who you are and what your music is about, the merch becomes a natural expression of that. And then it's easy to work with in all different types of marketing campaigns and can be very fluid. And the mentorship and a thing you're talking about, Julian, 100% do I agree with that assessment from somebody outside the industry. And I think we have a lot of panels at industry events and stuff, but it seems there's always a feeling of us and them. There's always a feeling of in and on the outside. And I think that dynamic makes it less easy to have this mentorship or approachable or accessible type thing. So, and I do think it's something the industry should look at, having more of this, more mentors available, directly accessible.
One comment I would make quickly just about that, we talked about that, the merch campaign I did. What was interesting about that is I wasn't directing people to my Bandcamp or my Bandzoogle or my Shopify. I was saying, hey, here I am. I'm right here. Send me a message. Comment below. I'll send you a message. Let's talk.
Exactly.
It was me and my fans doing a direct transaction. How can I pay you? Okay, you can go to my paypal.me. It's going directly in my pocket. There's no percentage going to anybody else. Or you can e-transfer my work email, whatever worked for each fan. I wanted to figure out a way. It's just, again, it's about kind of breaking down that barrier and saying, hey, I'm in the bar, you're in the bar, let's talk. We're here together.
Yeah, because they don't really, fans, it's such a unique relationship. It's so different than the consumer product relationship. The artist fan relationship is its own thing. And we're selling products, but really what fans want is they want to be part of you. They want to feel connected to you, the person, the artist. They want that feeling of accessibility. They want to feel in on your life and what's happening behind the scenes and stuff. So it's not about selling your music as an independent artist. It's about connection. It's really about creating a feeling of community. And through that community, you start, selling things or making income, but it's community first.
Just to add, somebody there's asking just about merch sales platforms. Like I've started to use Shopify and Printful. So there's like I guess there's an app within Shopify that connects with Printful. I found that Printful for me has been pretty easy to use, so that's another option.
I just had a couple more questions before we wrap up. And Julian, one is for you about releasing an album during this time, because I think you're the only one who's actually had the release happen during COVID of this group. Is there any tips that you can give the audience here about releasing new music during this time?
The reason that I ended up releasing the record during this period of time was because of the content within the record itself. Had the record been, sort of a party record, I probably wouldn't have released it. But it was an interesting sort of thing. It's been really busy. Like I said earlier, it's actually created more work than I'd ever, seen before, because of the way that things are done now. When before I would have released the record and gone and toured it, now I'm here at home trying to find out how to promote it worldwide at the same time, and become a videographer and all those things. But I think that here's the trick to releasing a record. Because I am an independent artist, I had the choice of when to release the record. It was slated for the fall, and I had sort of leaked out one song, and some of my friends were like, wow, you should release this right now. And being an independent artist, you have the power to decide when you want to do things. So I just hit the button and said, okay, let's go. Which turned out to be a very good decision, because like Kevin said, people were sitting around ready and willing to listen, because they're not doing anything else. There's another comment in the thread, though, talking about the live performance, which is interesting, is that when you're trying to sell a live performance or promote a live performance, I hadn't thought of this, but you got to take into consideration that you're asking people to stare in front of a screen a little bit longer. That's a hard thing to do. Everybody's burnt out by this stuff. At least I am. And the reason that I thought releasing this record was a good idea is because the content is listenable, that they wouldn't have to sit in front of a computer and listen to this record. I didn't have to show it off, which is like what in previous releases, the Julian Taylor band has had to come up with, the 8-piece and show off in front of a live audience. This was more of a thing that was laid back. So I think you got to just, I would recommend the first bit of advice is that if you feel that it's time to let something go and let it into the world, then I would trust that gut feeling. If you don't feel that way 100%, then don't do it.
Yeah, I think right now it's not the time to be rushing things. There's no need to rush things at this exact moment. For me, this year's been, honestly, it's been a chance to kind of step back for a second, because for the past 10 years, it's been 100, 150 shows a year, always gone, or getting ready to go, or getting ready to release a record. This has been a year of crossing my T's and dotting my I's, cleaning out the cobwebs. Am I signed up for all my royalty programs, MROC and SOCAN and all these things? Do I have all of my songs up there, etc.? And kind of greasing the hinges, making sure it's all working.
Mm-hmm. If there's the idea for a plan, that's the plan. For everybody, that should be the plan. Don't rush things, and dot your I's and cross your T's, and be ready for things when they come.
Good advice. I had one last question for Tara, and it's about cause-based musical projects, of which you are involved in a variety of them, or at least have been for a while. And since COVID's kind of on the mind, how have cause-based musical initiatives evolved during the pandemic, and what are your thoughts generally about causes that were important before are not, it's not like they're gone. They're still important. In fact, maybe more important that people kind of remember other things other than COVID. So what are some thoughts you can share in the context of, maybe sharing some advice to people who in normal times would have wanted to have their project connect with the cause they believe in?
Yeah, I kind of get teased for being the charity girl. I do like working with, lots of organizations. And I think it boils down to something really simple. It's difficult to get people to give money in normal times. So when the cash dries up, there's a feeling of sort of withdrawing or whoa, what's going on? It's unsure where the economy's headed. People get a lot more protective of their money because there's a feeling of being unsure. So it's really difficult to go to donors or continue down the same path in this kind of environment with the tone that's out there. So we've pulled back and pretty much paused everything as far as the initiatives we had going with agencies and organizations for that reason, because they're just struggling now to keep their head above water, to have enough cash coming in to keep their to keep their lights on. And what happened, like if you look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, when you're dealing with where will my food come from, can I keep the lights on, you're in survival mode. It's difficult to be creative. So we all work in creative, finding creative ways to do things. It's difficult to be creative. So as we get into more settled, when the mood out there kind of settles a bit, I think we'll see it rising. So if you're an artist watching right now and you're thinking about, working with a cause that you love, I would still do it, but I would come at it in a way that really had no financial, would put no financial strain on the organization. So make sure what you're bringing to the table is value, and that that you can do it on your own. Because what a lot of artists do, I think they make a bit of a mistake, is they're like, oh, if I pair up with this cause, it will do this, this, and this for me. But really, when you're pitching a partnership with anybody, sponsors, I mean, Kevin works in this all the time, sponsored anything, it's about shifting that mentality to, what do I bring to the table? What can I do to help, as opposed to, how's this going to help me and my fan base? So in that thinking, when you reach out to something, just be super mindful that when there's no cash and it's unsure out there, that whatever the ask is for the partnership won't put any strain on them. But I think it's still, a really important thing to have as part of your development plan or your business plan as an artist, is to connect with your community. So just be mindful of what's happening, like what is actually happening with the organization that you're planning on reaching out to. What is their big challenge they have? Can you actually help with that? And be authentic in it, as opposed to, what can I get? What can I get?
Perfect. Okay. Thank you. Last question, briefly for each one of you. How do you hope the music business will continue to evolve? How do you hope your music business will evolve during the pandemic, and how can the rest of us help? Kevin.
How do we
how do you, we're at some stage of this thing right now.
Yeah.
Kind of, what's been happening up until now. What are some things you're hopeful for over the course of this hopefully last phase of this thing, and what can people that are watching or part of the conversation, how can we be a part of that success, or those steps you'd like to take?
Oh man, I feel like that. I don't know what I'm hopeful for. I think for me, over the course of the pandemic, like I've had an opportunity to connect with people that I would have never ever connected with before. Artists from all over the place: Ottawa, Toronto, Hawaii, Oakland, and for me, like that's something that I'm just looking forward to a lot more, is connecting with people. And I encourage people, like, I'm more like, I'm a PR guy, journalist, like people like me have never been more accessible. Like during this pandemic, I've had like artists say, hey, can we do a Zoom call so I could preview some new music I'm about to drop, or to get your thoughts. I'm like, yeah, like the amount of calls I've done with people just to play me new music and get my thoughts. Like, people, you could do that. Like the amount of people, like meetings have never been more accessible. Like even listening parties, like at the beginning of the pandemic, I was looking to see like how many people are actually going to do a Zoom listening party and invite me. And I literally got invited to one like 2 weeks ago, which was like my first listening party for the whole pandemic on Zoom. And I was like, why aren't people doing this? Like, why aren't I getting invited to more listening parties? I'm like, I love listening parties, especially if I can sit in my pajamas and be on it. So, I think there's so many opportunities to get access to people in TV, radio, media. Like we've never been more accessible. Like I think I'm pretty accessible, but people just don't reach out. So I think that's something I'm looking forward to, just really connecting with people. Me personally, I look forward to putting out more content. About to drop really get our YouTube channel going. So if you guys want to subscribe to that, that'd be great. But yeah, other than that, that's kind of it.
Kevin, what was the YouTube channel link? YouTube.
Oh, it's Shifter Magazine. You should be able to find it. Yeah.
Okay. And Julian, how about you?
Me?
Yes.
I really miss people. I'm hopeful to, like, shake somebody's hand, maybe give them a hug, or say, like, introduce myself and actually interact like a human instead of being worried at, like, a grocery store that I'm too close to somebody. Really, really screws with my head, man. As far as my music is concerned, I haven't been that creative over the pandemic because I've felt like kind of stifled and stuck. I wonder why, but I want to be able to write again, and I don't want to write like about this pandemic because I don't want to be stuck in time again, and I worry about that. So that's what I want from my music. I think that I'm looking forward to, like, I don't feel like I'm gonna be ready to, like, jump out and be in a big crowd of people. I feel like my energy and my body is not going to allow me to do that. I just feel that way. And so I think I'm ready to just start off small and be in small rooms with people and sort of connect that way. I hope that people that are my daughter's age will see that being off a screen is way more valuable. I hope that the music industry finds that, what, in Kevin's comments about how people are more accessible, I hope that they find that it's not all about themselves, and that reaching out to people and connecting with people is really amazing, and that people can be accessible. And I hope that people in higher places are accessible to people who are trying to make their way up. I certainly want to be. I want to look at my life and try to find a way that I don't have to tout what I'm doing and be on social media all the time, because I find it distracting. And I find it distracting from I don't want to be like Jack Torrance, all work and no play makes Jack a dull boy, and find that after all this is said and done that I lost all this time.
Zach, how about you?
That's a really interesting bit there, Julian. I've actually done more for myself this year than I've done in 10 years. I haven't ridden a bike in 10 years, but I got a bike this year. And like you, I've found it super hard to create, because it is all life has felt so situational and so immediate. And so much of this year has just been about finding normal for me and creating normal for my kids and resting. I hope, like you, I hope that creating, I can find the space to create again when I'm no longer homeschooling and things like that. And yeah, I really do. I mean, I know that things are not going to go back to normal. I'm not blind. I'm not expecting that to happen. But I do hope at some point in time within the next year, we're able to gather with people in rooms again. I don't think Folk Alliance is going to be the same ever again, or, the big conferences. I don't know. I think we're a ways from that, but like, like you said, small rooms, start small and work our way up. The road, I never realized how much being on the road was such a big part of my life. Over the past 10 years, I've done an awful lot of that. And there came a point during the pandemic when, my partner said, you just need, just go do something for yourself. What do you like? And I was like, what do I like? What do I like? I like playing music, but that's not what I need right now. And I was like, oh, you know what? Like, me being on the road, being with people, performing for people, that was what I really liked. That's what I enjoyed. Yes, I'm fortunate that I've been able to pay my bills doing that, but it was such a big part of me, and then it was just gone. So I really do hope that we're able to get back there at some point in time. some way, shape, or form. I hope I'm not just performing in front of a screen for the rest of my life. I think it's going to be really interesting to see how the next generation comes up, because you think about like a band of 18-year-old indie rock musicians starting out now. Gosh, I can't imagine. I don't even know. I wouldn't even know. It'll be interesting to see the music that's being made and how it's being shared. And yeah, mostly I want to I want to remain hopeful and curious and able to learn. So we're doing a good job so far in that, and just going to try and keep doing that.
Tara, last word is yours.
The pressure. I think, just feeling all of you and hearing what you're saying, I think, we're going to be feeling the effects of this for a very long time, because as music creators, it isn't something we do. It isn't just our job, it's who we are, so music is woven into the fabric of who we are. So when you have a significant channel of being who you are taken from you, or sidelined, or stopped so abruptly and so quickly, there's an emotional and mental impact on that. And like all of you are sharing, we're finding ways to take the time to do housekeeping stuff, make sure we're registered, and to rest and all this good stuff. But at our core, we create because we want to connect. So I'm most looking forward to getting back out in front of real humans in those rooms, whether it's 2 people or 1,000. I could only hope one day. I think that that's going to be part of the healing process. And I think my hope is that audiences there'll be a huge surge once we can get back to live music, because my hope is the absence of it will remind us how valuable it is and how it increases quality of life to be able to go to live music events. So my hope is that will be part of the outcome of this pandemic.
Tara, Kevin, Julian, Zachary, thank you for sharing your experience, feelings, ideas, and hopes for the rest of the pandemic and beyond.